I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Capital Committee for November 16th. Second item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at those? If not, we can hold off to the next meeting. I actually haven't, so I'd like to hold off if that's all right.
You need a motion for that? Or no? Need a motion for that?
No, not okay. Enough. Item 3, overview of Nantucket Public School facilities for fiscal year 18 capital requests. So, how are you guys doing today?
Good morning.
Good morning. If you guys want to just go through your items there and enlighten us, and we have been, because we are trying to keep in mind the out years, if you could sort of go down the list and discuss some of the out year items as well, that would be helpful, and the floor is yours.
Go ahead. I'm going to let Diane take us through this.
Okay, the first one that you see on your projects by department list is NHS building improvements, and we had actually changed this and combined all 3 schools to one request. One request for $300,000 for all 3 schools, because what I'm finding is I get through projects on, say, the elementary school, and then I have some money left, and we have to replace the roof on the auditorium. I just found out, and the first price I got was $250,000, but I can't pull from another school, so it just makes sense going forward. If you were to look at our going forward numbers, they are all combined to one. It just says building improvements, and I'm trying to combine all of them into one line item, so to speak. So we have a little bit of flexibility in going forward and replacing things capital items. So my request this year for the $300,000 for all 3 buildings, some of the things that we hope to do in NES, there are some interior doors that need replacing. We're having problems with alarms because the doors are old and wrecked and rusted, and we need to replace some old carpeting. There's some restroom floors that need repainting. Some of the built-in cabinets through the years have their compressed particle board, and they are blown up and they need to be replaced. In some of the classrooms, we're going to do some reconfiguration of space for the community school offices and the central offices in NES. That was the master plan when we were building the new school. In CPS, we're going to paint all the lockers in the hallways and the interior doors in the classrooms, and then we have been working very hard to replace the carpets in the CPS with VCT tiles. It's a cleaner classroom. It's there's no smell. Some of those old carpets are really in bad shape. In NHS, there are some science lab upgrades that Mr. Bucky has asked for. He would like me to replace some lockers in both student locker rooms, some bathroom fixtures, carpeting in the main office. There's a sprinkler system in the MDF room, which is the one of the server rooms, one of the main server rooms, and it's a wet system right now. We'd like to put a dry system in there. God help us if the sprinkler system ever goes off, because we won't have computers for quite some time. And I'd like to get the remaining 3 walls of the field house reshingled. The one wall was done last year by the carpenter, vocational building trades. And then there's some more chain link fencing that I'd like to get replaced around campus. We replaced a substantial amount with the new project, but there's still some really old, kind of rusted, falling down. So does anyone have any questions about that? It's a big package.
Peter?
Just a question, Diane. The lockers, are you going to electrostatically paint those?
I guess we could.
What it does is you charge the metal with a positive, and they charge the paint with a negative, and it adheres. So we used to do it all the time with the lockers. Great. It's phenomenal.
Okay.
In lieu of spray painting, because then you have overspray, and with this they don't have to do as much masking, and it'll save you money, and it adds time to the lockers.
Thanks for the suggestion.
I used to do it all the time. Not me personally, but
Actually, okay, I'll go on to the next one. The next request is for paving at NHS and CPS parking lots. So as you can see by the photographs, the back of the school is in kind of rough shape. I'm not sure what year this was originally paved. Maybe it was the year that the school was built, I'm not sure. But over the years, it's really taken its toll. And, you know, in one of the photographs, you can see we actually dug this trench to hook the fiber optic cable from the high school to the elementary school as part of the large project. So there are some repairs that need to be done in the front of the school as well. So that's what that request is for.
If I may say, that's just a great preventative maintenance. You know, Richard and I met with Diane and Michael, and once all of the projects are done in and around, it just, if you don't redo, not patchwork, but if you don't redo, then these seams will just continue to open and cost us more money down there.
We should be doing seal coat, I mean, what they do in some of these private neighborhoods, we used to do this years ago, seal coating, so you don't get the cracking. But, I don't know what to say, I mean, contracted. When they come here to do not North but Massachusetts gets done. Where was the other neighborhood that just got done? I just saw it. I can't think of where it is now, but there's another place that they do it. Every couple of years, all of a sudden, here comes this crack.
So spray coat.
They just put it's like the tie you know, that you buy at Home Depot in a 5-gallon bucket, put it on the, you know, I just, seal coating, but it's a different, they might have a different name. And they come here and do Massachusetts, but there's another place they do, and I'm just having a tough time remembering.
Is that just to seal the cracks and things like
It
that?
keeps it from, it helps, you know, I mean, I don't know if that's something that we should even bother with. I think this is original, 1989.
I think you're right, Nat. I mean, I tried to
Long
look
time.
back and tried to find when it was, and I
Yeah.
couldn't find anything.
Are we grinding, or are we just overlaying? We don't want that curve and its angle to be like, all of a sudden, it's 1 inch reveal.
We're probably gonna
Yeah, that's
grind
okay.
and pave,
That's better.
that part.
Yeah. Okay.
We had some, I don't wanna say issues with drainage, but we had some delicate areas with drainage when the new cross-campus drive went in, and we
Yeah.
have to be cautious of where the
Water
elevations
ends up
are
going,
and how the
right.
water drains
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and things like that. So I 100% agree, it should be ground and then paved.
And that new drive, if I may, that goes by the basketball court towards CPS, that's gonna get a second coat
Yes.
anyway, so that's
That's
perfect
only
timing.
first coated right now, as well as the cross-campus drive that goes from the elementary school to First Way. That has one coat. We did that for a reason. We still have construction vehicles driving all over the place,
Smart
and we
reason.
really didn't want the whole pavement ruined.
Yep.
So we opted to wait until next spring for that.
Richard, you have a question?
Diane, is that enough money, and is that a Victor estimate?
That was a Victor estimate, and that was based on his price for the town paving.
Right.
So I asked him for an estimate, and this is what he gave me,
Okay.
so. I have been filling potholes over the years, since I've been there 3.5 years. Every year after the winter and the spring, I ask him to come in and just do some repairs just to get us through, so. But we knew the big project was coming.
Stephen, you have a question?
Yeah, quick, Diane, just to follow up, Stephen Welch, by the way.
Hi, Stephen.
Good morning, Mike,
Hi.
nice to
How
meet
are
you. Follow up on Matt's comment. Over in Nantucket, those roads have been in place as they are, I think it's been almost 37 years now. They've never had to be replaced, and a big part of that was the seal coating, but that's more aesthetic. Every 10 years minimum, the seal coating, but the crack sealing is huge. It's cheap money.
Yep.
Victor probably does it. I just mention it because
No, it's a great idea.
that really helped promote, and it saved a lot of money, and then that money can be utilized someplace else. You know, if you're the school, it's a closed system, so if you can keep down on your paving costs, maybe that's helpful for you to know.
Thanks.
Jim, did you have a comment?
Just I'm hearing from folks here about continued maintenance. You don't have anything in the out years for that for paving, so I just wondered if there's periodic things in the out years you
Yeah,
might
I think-
plug some money into.
I think probably because we've done so much of the paving within the project and around the project, that the out years might be beyond, we hope beyond this, if we're doing the maintenance in between.
I just thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you'll have NIS, NES, totally, completely done. And in reality, that's most of your paving square footage is there, your parking lots are over there. It's
That's
sort
gonna
of
be,
the
that'll be
last
done
piece.
this summer,
Yeah.
the final coat over at NES, because there's still so much construction going over that, we decided to wait until spring.
The First Wave parking lot is complete.
Yeah.
Complete. The one right off of Surfside Road, the new NIS parking lot, it doesn't have the second coat. That's why the parking lot, the lines aren't on, the numbers aren't in. We opted to wait.
Smart.
When you have less coats than you should, and you're preserving the coat so that after all the traffic's done, does that though, will those, because it's less of a protective, it's less of a thicker layer, are you gonna get grooving at all from the heavy equipment going over in
We
there?
haven't yet.
No, okay.
No, and we've been very cautious. So if you go into one of the circles right now, you'll see there's curbing around the center of the circle. We actually had them come and put a berm in, so when we plow, we're not pulling up the curbing. We've kind of tried to think all of it through, trying to get us just through the winter so that we can get to that final phase of, but we haven't seen any grooving, or we have seen
We
grooving
haven't,
on the fields.
the one thing that we're maybe aware of, if not concerned, is the moving of the modulars. And we didn't want to finish everything and then be moving those over the final coat. Got some pretty good weight there. The one modular is going, I think, the end of December, and then the other modular is available to the highest bidder in June or July, and then we'll have those out of there.
We have had some interest.
Yes, we have.
I did a site visit out at the airport, and they, one of the items is well, they were showing me some paving issues, and it was back in the day when they paved everything, they paved it for the air traffic that they had. Now they have these big planes coming out, and the grooves it's identical to those big JetBlue and, Continental landing gear. Yeah, and it's just, it's unbelievable, the track, and you're talking definitions about this much, grooves about that much. It's unbelievable, because they only put down a certain amount to handle
Interesting.
the weight of the traffic that they were moving around. So anyway, it just
Well,
kind
we'll
of brought
watch
that to
them
my
out when we
attention.
put on the final coat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next request is for upgrades to the HVAC system in the high school, middle school. And the price came from our current maintenance contractor. They gave us a price for the elementary school as well, but I haven't completely gone out for the elementary school because National Grid came into the picture, asked us if we would be willing to work with them. They have some grant money that they'd like to give us to help with that. And so right now, we're talking systems. Which system would be best? We don't want to get locked into a proprietary system where we have to use this contractor forever and ever. We just don't want to. So I've really been working hard looking at different software systems that would work best. Some of the motors need to be upgraded. A lot of the controls will need to be upgraded. And that's what this money is for. So whatever system we end up with at the elementary school, we'll probably end up with at this school as well. I'm not saying that it won't be this E&E, but this has been the general price that people have come in to us at when I've asked. I actually just gave a sheet to a spec sheet to the people that are building the NIS right now, because our HVAC system in there will be on a new software, and it is not proprietary. So this was a good avenue for me to look, and then I got in touch with Jim Whitehead right away, who's the National Grid guy, and said, this is who I'm working with. He said, that's great, that's one of our contractors. So we've been going back and forth for that. So this is definitely moving, and I want people to think, because we got the appropriation last year for NES, so we haven't done anything. We have, and this is the second phase, the other part of it. And then the last request is for Bacchus Lane playgrounds and field improvements. Mike, do you want to?
Yeah, many of you may remember that when we proposed the new intermediate school, the plan was to have a playground on Bacchus between the Muse and the present Bacchus Fields, that section of land. It is land bank land, and we've been trying to work through the very involved process with the land bank to have that land, and it had to go through the legislature, which it has now, and now it's going to be, the final step, I believe, is a swap of land with the town that Mr. Boris is working on. And when that's done, the idea is to put a playground there and to actually put the baseball field, which is now in a terrible spot behind the high school.
I always liked it.
Well, did you hit a couple home runs? You like hitting
The
home runs
backstop.
into the
What was your
Boys and
batting
Girls
average?
Center?
I was a pitcher, but they didn't even have baseball when I was in school.
The problem is that, first of all, fans watch the games from in the street, because there's no area there. There are foul balls bouncing on cars, and so we'd like to move the baseball field over to the Bacchus area.
I think I gave you a photograph.
Yeah,
it's good, Roger.
Red
Looks
Ridge.
Which
good.
is, and then the playground over there, which will allow us to split the primary school and the intermediate play area.
Home runs go in the cars and Bacchus Lane instead of spots. That's
Right,
more efficient.
right, it's much better. There'd be much fewer. I know, I'm with you.
I got you, though. This is good.
We don't have anybody that can hit a home run.
The lefty.
315 down the line, I think I threw that.
You can?
And this is also, I'd like to mention, in preparation of our athletic complex
Yeah.
renovation. Do you have some?
No, I'm gonna pass it up.
It's probably-
The 10-year that you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And you would refer that to as your master plan.
So we had a master plan for the athletic complex to redo that, and we put it on the shelf when seats in the classroom became the more immediate problem. You know, we just didn't feel like we could go forward with that when we had 350 new kids in the last 7 years. So it's been there, it's just sort of sitting, waiting. The first piece of the puzzle is moving that baseball field, and then you can start to develop that area with some other fields. Whether we use artificial turf or not is still up to debate. There's some bad press in the last 5 years with artificial turf.
Field turf.
Yeah, and, but they're making it out of new materials now that supposedly aren't a concern. So whether we go with grass or the artificial surface, we're not sure. But
You told us this 2 years ago,
yeah,
this plan. I
But
mean,
we
this
held back
vision
because of
plan.
this.
Right.
So
This is
everything
all
that we
falling
do,
into place now.
yep.
right.
That makes total sense.
And I think that it's kind of worth mentioning that when we go to tournament play, when Nantucket goes to tournament play, most of the time we're playing on AstroTurf or synthetic fields.
Yeah.
And our kids are at a huge disadvantage because they don't have anywhere to practice that or play that. I kind of go back to when my daughter was a senior and they were in the tournament for field hockey. The game was so much faster. Our girls couldn't even keep up. So we have that too, that
We go
other
out,
schools.
when we have a tournament game, the soccer team will go out to Novadear and practice for a practice or two, just to get the feel of the game. You can do that for lacrosse too, you can't do it for field hockey. And field hockey's a much better game
It's been a scheduling
on
problem
turf.
too out there. So
so.
that's a tough thing.
Is this whole plot land bank?
On, at Bacchus, from where our existing field is, the fence, and our existing field
This-
towards the Muse is land bank land. Yeah.
It's just the 5.4 acres. That we were,
Is that, it says back to the playground field improvements, is that is that enough money to sort of get this complex?
You know, Richard asked
Are we
that
doing
same
some fast?
question when we were meeting, and it's a good question. I think we're going to probably do some supplemental playground funding to help out, and I would imagine that we'll do what a lot of districts do. We'll add a piece of equipment every year, you know, every summer as you sort of build it up. But the thing is that a playground for third, fourth, and fifth graders is a little bit different than a playground for primary school children. So you want more things like, you know, challenges, and I'm not thinking of ropes courses, but a little bit more of the obstacle course type things instead of just swing sets and that sort of thing. You'll always want swings no matter what grade level, but it's a little bit different as we set it up there.
And at what point might this be items that would roll into just your budget?
I would hope that it would be something that would be accomplished in a not more than a 2-year period. I don't think you want to build a new school and have a playground that is unfinished for a long period of time. And so I think, Christie, probably 2 years. Want to knock it out.
Michael, can you just explain the projected budget for the improvement of the athletic facilities is $4 million, and you're asking for X amount of dollars over those years? Will you be able to, in a year where you have you're asking for 750, will you be able to do stuff with that 750, or are you banking it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we want to phase it, and as I said, the first phase is to move the baseball field over. The second phase might be to develop a field where the baseball field is, maybe an artificial multi-purpose field that could be used for field hockey, soccer, lacrosse, probably. And then the bigger question, in the original complex, we were going to move the football field to where the baseball field is now. Right. And that's, we want to revisit that, and we want to see if, because that's a big ticket. And is that still practical, or do we use that upper field for the multi-purpose field, keep the football field where it is, but put in turf on the existing football field with a 6-lane track around it? If we did that, we could phase it over probably 4 or 5 years.
There's some other, just so everybody's understanding, when we do upgrade this, there's, what did he say? There's a law about how close the restrooms have to be to the field. So that was the reason we initially put the football field up right behind the school, because then we could use the school's restrooms if our next phase was to put in the field house with the public restrooms. You have to have public restrooms within a certain amount of feet, and so that was kind of pushed us up, and that was one of the reasons why it sort of was put there originally. I'm not sure how we'll solve that.
Well, the other thing is the orientation, the north, south, east, west orientation of any field. Because you don't want the orientation to be east, west, so the sun is in somebody's eyes when you're either receiving the ball or when a pitcher is, pitching. You don't want the sun in the batter's eyes, and so field orientation becomes a driving force in a lot of this. It's kind of interesting.
Mike, that's actually interesting you bring that up, because the field orientation, keying into the use and how to use it and so on and so forth, I want to take a little bit of different approach to that. Many years ago, we met with the skate park folks before that went in. And we told them, based on our experience, you're going to have problems with safety. You're going to have problems with security. Lo and behold, many years later, police are over there much more, the CCTV cameras need to go in. I would just suggest that but on behalf of the town, look at planning in your cameras, planning in visual lanes, so that when the police go through, they can see what's where, when, how,
Yeah.
all those things that will help to promote a sense of safety, because you've got a grouping here of somewhat incompatible uses in a sense. You've got young kids with adults, with gardens, with dogs, don't get me wrong, I think this is great. But I would suggest that you take a look at that if you have time, if you get a chance. And you may want to avail yourself to the resources of the Nantucket Police Department. They have a couple of officers who are certified in this. And they will go through and they will, give you feedback on it. Obviously through the chief and whatnot is important. I guess the other thing I wanted to comment on, three comments. One is a question, actually, the vegetable garden. Is that for the school group? It's not a community garden, I presume?
Well, when you're looking at this is one of the original maps of design. And for instance, the dog park is no longer going to be there. At one point, it was a discussion in the community, and I think the dog owners said that's not a good place, so that's not even going to be in this at this point, as far as I know.
No.
The other thing is the garden. That was the garden that we had at the back of the elementary school playground that was in the way of the cross-campus drive. We moved that garden to just behind my office, and so that won't be in there either. So you don't have as many of the mixed uses that you're referring to. So we probably should have used a different map, but this helped show, the baseball field idea and the playground.
It's probably gonna be more parking,
Yeah.
because the outcry has been you don't have enough parking over there.
So you would continue to work with Land Bank and take all that
Yes.
that's yellow lined?
So that would be a good candidate for lighting and
Exactly.
cameras. The other questions I had, the aerial ad, are you at all looking at, that's a very populated area, school children age, people who would be using this facility. Are you at all looking at ways, there's going to be a path there, I guess is what I'm saying. And you might want to design that in advance so you can control access there and you have a handle on it. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I think a lot of community members know that there are a lot of bad things going on back there right now. That's always been an area behind the Muse where, according to local lore,
Be careful on that.
right, that's why I said, according to, some drug things
The road's brand new.
going on.
So it's just more reason to get ahead of it is all.
Yeah, you're right.
And then the last thing is really more a housekeeping thing that goes back to the buildings and improvements. I note that on page 2, your total project cost is $1.5 million. It doesn't seem to properly be tracking the expenditure request in the general fund of $100K.
I don't know where you're
What
looking.
page 2 are you?
The detail sheet for the NHA's buildings improvements, it's probably just a software thing, but
Okay.
I want to clarify that.
The total project cost was $1.05 million. So if you look, 2018 through 2017 has 800,000, and then in the beginning here, there's a red piece that says 250, which should tie to the 1.05 million. Is that on page 2?
Oh, we don't have-
Oh, that's the total, that's including the out
That
years.
includes, yeah, that
Okay.
includes, so
I didn't
the
pick that up on the
150,
next
the
page.
$1.05 at the top includes the 250 from 17 that was allocated at town meeting, because that was discussed and approved last year.
Gotcha.
So the remaining in 18 to 27 is the 800,000. So that would agree to the 1.05 million.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Going back out to the sort of our 10-year plan, as any 10-year plan, you're making an educated guess as to what the needs are going to be, do the research. We've pushed the, as I said, the athletic stuff off for the last 4 or 5 years. But we know that we're going to have, continued window replacement and safety and security. And where it says safety and security, the two remaining issues in particular are vestibules or locks, airlocks, and safety locks between front doors. So this summer, we finally have done the middle school, which was the most vulnerable, because you could walk into the middle school and walk a long way before someone might stop you. So that's been done. The new intermediate school will have that. We do have locks and buzzers on all of our doors, as you know, but we want to have a vestibule on the inside of the high school. That won't be on the outside, it'll be built into the inside section, probably glassed in. And then we have a plan for vestibule area in the present elementary school, that will be the primary school.
Are you talking about the front doors only? or-
Yeah.
So we, you don't need to bring up another Nantucket lore thing
Yeah.
with you. Rear entry for voting and that kind of stuff. Is that all gonna kind of be able to work with any future changes so that we don't have to?
We dog the doors
You know what I
down
mean?
during
And
voting.
it worked so good the other day where you don't have to walk all the way around the school.
We have,
To just go in the front door. No, I'm just saying in the future, that's all I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
We have
When
a,
stuff comes up,
we have a police officer
Yeah.
stationed in the Hall of the Whale who has eyes on the back entrance by the ramp
Yeah.
out to the football field and to the CPS cafeteria. So if
That's the
somebody
one- that's the one I'm
stands,
talking about.
right, if somebody
Yeah.
stands right there, they've got eyes on that. Now, the last day for election, we did not have students in, and historically,
On big elections.
historically, we use that day for professional development, the November 7th or 8th day. But there are some other elections that we go forward with kids and staff in the building, and then we just monitor it more closely with our staff and the police. So we try to keep them open.
Good.
There's a huge array of opinions on that, too.
Sure there is.
Well, just while we have our town administrator here, who determines where the polling station is?
The board.
Because it seems, and I don't know for certain, but just looking at the new school that was built and what's apparently vast parking compared to the high school, or at least centralized parking, it would seem that area might be more conducive to voting and having people be able to get in easy, get out easy. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. And I'm not saying we do it next year, but I'm just saying it should be something to be thought of, because it's very difficult if you're working and you're trying to get there and you got kids and whatever it is, you're doing stuff, you're trying to get in there and vote. It's kind of a PIA. You can't park in the front, you gotta park in the back, you can't park on the street. It's just difficult for people, and I think we should be encouraging people to get in there and vote.
Steve, although if school's in session, that front parking lot would be full of staff. So it would, I think, more difficult maybe, because staff would fill up the parking lot and then you really have nowhere to go. Right now, the front of the high school is all visitor parking except for 2 spaces.
But isn't there, I mean, I haven't done a count, but if you look at it from an aerial view, it appears that there's significantly more parking accessible at the new school relative to, it's right there.
First way parking.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see, first way.
I
Okay.
think,
First way.
It's just, I don't want to chew up time with it, just throwing it out there that if we've got
talked
space
about-
and it turns out, gee, that actually might work better, maybe it's given some thought and talked about, and if it works, develop it, that's all.
I just wanted to really quickly reiterate one of Stephen's points, which was going to be one of my question I had, is I think that because it is on a far corner of the property, that there is some sort of surveillance on the playground area.
Yeah.
I think it would be. I think it's just from the get-go. We should have
every camera, every step we've taken, where cameras are going, what kind of cameras are going, is this a wide angle camera, is this one just gonna be focused on this area? We have worked with the police department, several members of the police department. That is not something we take lightly. You know, this camera's gonna be on this corner of the building, what does that cover? What kind of camera do we want there? And there are so many different kinds of cameras, and what you wanna see out of that type of camera. In the Bacchus Lane Athletic storage, we finally come to a conclusion that we have to put two 400 square foot buildings up right behind the skate park, that the deed restriction will not allow us to just do one building. But there are, again, working with the police department, where do we want the cameras, which direction do they face, that kind of thing. So I 100% agree with you.
Jim?
Just on how you monitor, are those contemporaneously monitored, or are they used for, if you have an incident, you go back and look at?
Yes, if you have an incident, so they
So it's not being
record.
people in the monitor?
No, we don't.
No, we don't have someone sitting, although it's on in my office and I get to pick,
No, I
like,
just wondered.
today, my
Like,
NHS
you got a lot of cameras.
outside is
Okay.
up and I pick strategic cameras and I look at them. But, and John Lucchini has a huge thing in that he monitors the inside of the high school, middle school, but, no, someone isn't sitting there all day long.
It's a different day and age.
Absolutely.
Peter?
Two points, if I may, maybe a question. Do we know the assessed value of all the buildings when everything would be done?
No.
I think that's.
We don't pay tax?
It would be, well, I mean, just from a standpoint of, when you
Insurance.
take money and spend money on a building every year, it's good to know what the value of that building is, because you can take a percentage. And I think that ties into the $300,000 you're kind of earmarking towards schools. For me, it's sizzle to the cell. And also, I think, if we advocate, which I do, the money's being spent potentially on all the fields, wouldn't it make sense to maybe compress the cash burn or the expenditure of those monies instead of over a 10-year period? Does it make sense to make it 6 or 8? Same amount of money, but doing it sooner rather than later. I think the more and more you spread projects over time, the project goes up.
I think we know that anything like this is going to have to be factored in as you have to for the entire community. So, where does that come up against, and in coordination with sewers or
Yep.
sidewalks or whatever other capital projects there are. But I certainly agree with you on the assessed value, and I would think that that would be a critical piece just for insurance purposes, so.
Well, if a tax
I'll
credit-
note
Fully
that.
completed, we'll add it to the insurance for the statement,
Good.
for the statement of values.
I mean, everyone should know, okay, well, geez, you spent $300,000, you just spent $47 million in the building, what do you need to spend money for? Right. Well, it's not just that, we have X hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions of value to these buildings, we have to maintain them. And from a perspective, we put in closed circuit television cameras in our property, I don't know, 5 years ago, and every single crime that's taken place on our site has been solved. Every one, wow.
We have a hard time
We
because
don't
we have
have
so
people
much real
watching
estate.
either.
We have blind spots here and there.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't get it all.
You know what the sad thing is?
Tough.
The age of the perpetrators.
Oh,
And it's our
right.
own gosh
Wow.
darn kids.
Oh, they weren't on camera long ago, so, you know,
That's what's scary.
you're
it's
saying,
not-
they
it's-
didn't have this.
Just
So
having them
They didn't
up,
know what they were doing.
just having them up. helps
That's a
with
good,
that.
that's a good, yeah, if he's gonna be the sign.
Absolutely.
Can I just make a comment,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Chairman? I'm reading this LLP report, which is kind of like what you're talking about, Peter. Have you read this? This is fascinating, this LLB architect thing. And I think that to sort of answer your value stuff, I don't know, all land is worth a lot here.
Yeah.
Like, that's irrelevant in my opinion as far as the value. I think it's more of what are we gonna do with this X building? And it identifies the buildings that we know we're not gonna keep in this list, which I thought was really good. So in other words, well, why should we put a roof on Plus? It's steel, doesn't need anything, just leave it alone until we figure out what we're doing. the fire station, what are we doing? It says, just ignore it because they're not gonna have it. So, sort of goes back to my thing with a few meetings ago with the Marine Department. Are we keeping that building or not? Are we gonna put it there or not? It's not really our decision in this committee for that stuff. I think that, with the school, since they're sitting here, obviously, is the, high school and the CPS, with their plan to make that sort of, their plan is to make that the intermediate and a new high school, correct? Or
Well-
that's the high school and it'll be an intermediate, right?
What
was the plan? I
Yeah,
forgot.
we talked about this, and I had said,
I think it was intermediate was gonna be new. CPS was
If-
new, and that'll all be just sort of the high school,
if the
right?
time
Yeah.
comes that we are going to need more space in the high school, and I hope that's 15, 20 years down the line, but I don't know. If the time comes, I would not build a new high school. That's the most expensive building you can build. I would make the present CPS
Into the
part
back
of the high school,
like it
make
used to
that
be.
whole thing a high school, and then build a new middle school. If and when you have to make that decision, I think those are cheaper dollars.
Yeah.
So, that's something that,
But as you know, Michael, you get a retraction in your young years, and expansion in your old years, and now at least we have facilities where we can
Right.
shuffle.
Right.
Yeah, the campus thing
Yeah.
and putting the money into what we're keeping. Obviously, we're not keeping forever the current field house.
right.
That's kind of hard. I'm just giving it a quick example. You know what I'm saying? You guys, everything you're doing, it seems like it's got a 20-year plan, a 50-year plan, and a 5-minute plan at the same time, which is great. That's what I like about this conversation.
Well, we even
Just-
talked about, at one point, in this whole new building thing, that if enrollment shifts, we could even do 4 through 6 in the new intermediate school, pull the 3rd back into the elementary school, and then you'll have 7th, 8th, and 7 through 12 before you went to your next building.
Could you do that switch in the summer, in a 2 months?
We're gonna have to do that switch this summer.
I can't.
You could have had,
Could you really?
Yeah.
Okay, just asking.
It's a
And I-
great resource.
If I may, I know Richard and I asked a question of Diane and Michael, and Michael, if you could answer the question for the group to hear. Just tell us the scenario if either the Lighthouse School failed, or the new school failed, or worst case, both.
that's a very
That got brought up years
scary proposition. Somebody once asked me, I was at a gathering with at the time, the new director of the new school and the director of the Lighthouse School, and they said, "Are you competitors?" And it was an awkward question, sort of, and I said, I don't think so. In that, I think the two private schools might be more competitors than the public school is with them. And I said, personally, we couldn't stand to have either of those schools close, because that would mean, I think it's probably 170 and 100. That would mean almost 300 kids coming into the public schools, and we would be just couldn't do it. So I hope that they stay strong. My job, though, in terms of the competition, is to make it such that no parent feels they have to go that route. That's my job, and our job is to strengthen the public schools so that people don't feel they have to. But many people will choose to, and for some children, it's a better route. I don't deny that.
But from a structural standpoint, from our
We could
edifice,
never
that's-
take in 300 kids at this point. Because you're not taking 300 K to 12. You're taking 300 K to 8. And that's a different impact on a couple of schools.
We wouldn't be getting rid of any of the modulars.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment too.
Sure.
I'm Melissa Murphy, and I also sit on the school committee. Mike, do you want to talk about the potential of universal pre-K and how that would fit in to this?
We, in building the new intermediate school, we went with the pre-K to 2 and 3 through 5 instead of pre-K to 3, 4, 5, 6 on purpose because we believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, universal preschool will be mandated. And I think it's both a Republican and Democratic agenda item, and I think it will happen. So the first year that we open in September, we may have some rooms that aren't filled yet with preschool, but we have it when we have to go to it. Now, what we would like to do is to offer space to private preschool providers the first year or second year or however long it takes before we go to universal preschool. So that was built into the idea and design.
Mike, if I may, not consequential to capital program, but that's where you might get some pushback from the private schools and the members of the community who are involved with those, which is not insignificant because that's their feeder route, the preschool. So if you're creating a market for other preschools to come in, I understand there's a vast market for the preschools, but I just mentioned that in passing.
We know that, and we've tried, and not just from the private schools, but the private providers, if that's what you mean. And we don't want to be a threat to them. We want to be a supplement to them. Because right now there are kids on waiting lists that aren't in preschools. Mm-hmm. So if we can say, look, come on in, we have the space, use the space, but you run the program, I think it's less threatening, perhaps, to them. And some parents will always say, I like my little, wee whalers or Children's House or any of those because philosophically they have a little bit of a different bent.
It's a lore. It's a lore. Just saying, you brought it up.
Just keep going.
That's great.
Are you saying there's no Nantucket lore?
There's lots of it. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, there's an item in 2021 for NES sprinkler system for $850,000. Is that the wet dry thing you're talking about, or was that in this? Was that?
No,
It's not.
Yeah, unfortunately, and that's why I passed out the sheet that they had given to you, Christie, is that there were a couple things that didn't come off and have to be moved. So we're going to reconfigure the sheet that you had from Planet. Mm-hmm. There was a couple things that didn't get moved around, and that's why I gave you the school's 10-year plan. So that's what's going to end up in there, and for next Wednesday's meeting, we'll have an updated school one that will match that. Okay.
Do you want us to go through the 10, or we?
No, but what I would say is, because we do have to move on, what I would say is, just because we're done this meeting, if you could still work on filling out those out years justifications and descriptions on the if you haven't done them yet. I know
I haven't done them because I have done some of them. The auditorium improvements are simply the seats.
Yeah.
We've done the lower level. We want to do the upper level.
we can do that.
It's
Yeah,
just the number placeholder is great, but for the sake of just us being more involved in those out years and what's happening, that would be great.
Yes, that would be great. Right. That would be great.
Any other questions for Michael or Diane? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to see you both.
Take care.
Next, we're going to look at facilities, fiscal year 18 capital requests. If you guys both come to the table.
Thank you.
are here.
Does everyone know everyone here? Everyone, okay. Yeah, Richard, do you have a comment before we get going?
Just a quick question. I noticed in the LLB report, one of their recommendations right off the bat is that they do, or the town undertake an annual review of this process. This was done in 2015. Do we have one for 16? Or are we working on one for 17?
We're going to be, when we have our facilities staff a little more settled, because the transition there, Mark is just become our facilities manager 4 months ago, so he needs to settle into it, and then we intend to start taking on the
And Mark and I have actually had some discussions about how to pick apart the LLB report, and instead of putting projects in building by building, we're doing them by similar projects. So you'll see a project of several roofs, of bathrooms, so that we'll take it by topic instead of by building. And to that point, the first item that we have is roof replacements, and there is a series of roofs to be replaced. And I did not put it on the page. Here we go. If you want to talk about those.
So this is the list from, mainly from LLB, but some of the other ones have also been in that time period that you mentioned. Even in a year's time, we're starting to see some degradation of the roofs. Most notably at Fort Bathing Beach, shingles are starting to blow off. And we've got a new tenant that's going to go in there, so that's something that's become a priority. And then there are other ones that you see there, Harborview Way, Tom Evers Field, 25 Federal Street, in our admin building down in Nantucket. So they're all exceeded their lifespan at this point, and so they're at the top of the list.
The only one that wasn't included in the report was the Tom Nevers Field, but in visually looking at that, that is a priority and needs to be included with these. Any questions about this one?
This is more of a general accounting question. Is there, for lack of a better term, this isn't, I believe our mandate was capital program is $50,000 or more. Having said that, by lumping separate buildings together, I understand the convenience of that, managing it and reporting and so on and so forth, but it kind of takes a $10,000 project or a $4,000 project and it turns it into a capital project. If you've got 10 buildings, each require $5,000, it qualifies as capital. If you've got 10 buildings and it's only $5,000 per building, it's not a capital. I just mentioned that. How does that fit in with the accounting, on the accounting end of it? Can the town be lumping in projects on different buildings together and consider it one capital improvement?
Yeah, I mean, from an accounting perspective, it's not, I mean, if the money's allocated, it would be allocated in lump sum and it could be dispersed amongst the projects. There's no real issue, from my perspective, with doing it that way. It would be fine. It's much like the school is doing with the building improvements, as a lump sum for all 3 schools. It would be the same on the of doing, so this one's $120,000 for roof replacement at town buildings. We would identify what town buildings we're anticipating being able to do with that and identifying the costs that we potentially believe that each of them would be, but there's nothing from an accounting perspective that would prohibit us from doing it this way.
Okay, yeah, I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not questioning the validity. I just wanted to make sure
yeah,
I understood
absolutely.
before we got into the
It's a
details
good
of
question.
the projects.
Jim?
Thank you.
We're going to get a better price too. We bring somebody in to do.
Yeah, no, I
something
think
at
there's a lot of
$120
utility.
instead of-
Yeah.
Jim?
So, this is, it's really based on where you have some funds, a lot of it is, and it's not untypical to say, it's difficult to fund these expenditures out of, I guess, what you call in municipal language, the general fund. It's easier to say, let's lump these
expenditure that used to be maintenance gets backfilled with other things that the organization wants to do. And even though in a historical measure, those things, the roof, for example, of 28,000 had always been funded by the routine maintenance. But what I understand here is, and that's something to be skeptical about or be cautious about, is that stuff didn't get done. Okay, the roof, would tend to be in routine maintenance, didn't get done. So there isn't it isn't a matter of moving the accounts around. So I think the town's trying to say we need to do this work. There's not sources within the general fund to do it. I mean, whether they stand out and say that, but that's what the implication of this is, and they want to allocate it to use the source of funding as capital.
The next item is 20 South Water. This, even though it's below the capital threshold, was part of a larger project that we actually picked apart and did so that we could move NERDA into that building. So this is just the remaining piece of the larger work that's going on there. There's water that infiltrates up against, in between 3 East Chestnut and 20 South Water, that needs to be a block wall that needs to be waterproofed, and that's the remaining piece of the work in 20 South Water.
Peter, a question, Mark or Kara. The source of the water, is it from downspouts, Mother Nature, or?
It appears to be groundwater. When after a rain, the groundwater rises and it starts to come out.
Good, thank you.
The next one is 2 Fairgrounds. The building presently only has one handicapped access that's at the back of the building, which is not considered to be an appropriate ADA access. The ADA access is supposed to be to the same place that everybody else goes to.
Common entrance.
So this is to create an ADA accessible access to the front of the building. The Tom Nevers playground equipment was evaluated first by our staff and found to be deficient, and we brought in the vendor, Emmy O'Brien, who we have used before for playground equipment purchases. And they have done a review we're still waiting on, but the playset is in need of, if we could replace it, we will, but I believe it's probably going to need to be, repair it. I believe it's going to need to be replaced. We can confirm that once we get the information from the contractor.
Jim?
Throughout your presentation, are these based on estimates, or are they based on, do you have written estimates for all of these, say for the 100,000 for the playground?
This is, at this moment, it's not a written estimate, but this is what we've gotten. We're waiting on the written estimate from Emmy O'Brien. Public bathroom upgrades is another conglomeration of bathrooms that need to be addressed. What we have found is that many of the bathrooms that we have are not perhaps built to commercial/industrial standards. They're built with residential fixtures, and the traffic counts in the bathrooms far exceed the numbers necessary for triggering a more hardy installation. So this is to identify and source commercial grade fixtures, including toilets, sinks, ventilation, floors, so that we can make the public bathrooms a little bit more bulletproof.
It has to be kick-proof, because the majority of people, literally, believe it or not, in public spaces, flush toilets with their feet.
Kara, which buildings are those in?
4 Bathing Beach, which is the jetties, 25 Federal, which is visitor services, 34 Washington, which is Marine, Tom Nevers Playground, Dionis, and Sconset.
Oh, I apologize, I see it on your summary sheet here.
Just curious, the Four Bathing Beach, that's currently occupied by the Resource Department?
No,
Temporarily?
that's 2 Bathing Beach.
That's 2 Bathing
4
Beach.
is the Jetty's concession.
Oh, okay.
Karen, may I ask you a quick question on that? Would that also include hand dryers and, so all of the sort of
Any
fixtures would be
fixture,
up
yeah.
there? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd like a hair dryer.
I get confused, is 34 Washington the
Marine.
Marine, so that's the,
37 is finance.
okay.
We actually put people counters into 34 Washington last, I think we found people counters. At the, in the spring.
Phase out of it.
And it counted the people in and out, and there were days of 6,000.
Yeah.
6,000 people in that?
Well,
Well,
yeah, they
3,000
come-
in and out.
Is that coming off of?
That's like a round trip excursion ticket, counts as 2 ways.
Yeah, that's the,
Makes sense, yeah. Opera House.
I've been in there quite a bit, and I don't like to hang out there.
How do you even drive down the street if that many people crowd? I don't, okay.
It, they're in dire need of some up. I mean, they're a gateway to some extent to the community.
Is that $100 an
Yeah.
hour?
The marina,
It's open.
the town pier.
It's open all the time.
It's a gateway, and and not to take away. I mean, they've been kind of hobnobbing and putting things together as best they can with what they have, but it's pretty bad shape.
It's the way it was built.
Yeah,
It's
no,
not
I
the
understand.
age.
I understand.
Building's new.
Yeah, I-
80s, it's not ancient. It's the way it was built. That's the problem.
Jim?
I know we talked about the bathrooms there, I think when I made your presentation, I thought that was gonna be a bigger renovation than that.
There was discussion a couple of years back of doing an addition to 34 Washington. And my suggestion would be to start looking at that again. There had been some discussion about putting the public bathrooms at 37 Washington. And I think what the people counts have kind of pointed to is that we don't want that number of people crossing the street to access the bathrooms. It'll get problematic to try to get across Washington Street. So I think it's something that needs to be thought about.
Karen, have you spoke to the Marine Department and the police? Because I think they were talking about a full renovation for this building.
Yes, yeah.
Coordinated?
That's what I,
Sort of.
I'm speaking about
Right.
the discussions that they've been having.
And I'll have an update for the group when we meet, because I've met with them
Yeah.
to discuss
Okay.
that and other projects.
Libby, do you have a
I'm just
comment?
gonna elaborate a little bit. We did have a bigger plan of about $1.2 million because we are basically at the threshold of doing much more significant improvements there. ADA, FEMA, all that. So the question is it worth putting that amount of money into that building? The idea of
Exactly.
the town administration is to work this into a larger plan of where municipal facilities are going to be located.
Bingo. That's right.
Peter?
And if I may, Libby and Brian, that's why for you to be successful, you need to know the trigger points financially on assessed value of buildings, where that is relevant to repair and maintenance. Who cares? You can do that all day long. Construction dollars is the trigger point, not repair and maintenance. So that gets into your accounting. I live the life of hiding monies, calling it R&M, not here, past municipalities. And but you need to know those trigger points, because that's when the state comes in, and the ADA is child's play in comparison to the MAAB. The Mass Architecture Area Board is
Yeah.
far stricter, and the timeline is narrower, so.
And the
far more.
floodplain stuff.
But you do, you need those, and I can help.
Okay, great.
But I still think the final resting place part is part of it. How can you?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if it was,
Of course, yeah, with anything.
I mean, we had this discussion two years ago with 20 Southwater. $1,000 square foot, I think it was, to renovate versus X to not. But that's the decision that's gonna get made, a different venue to figure that out. Like, I mean, we need to know where we really wanna go with finance, with the sheriff office, with the Marine Department.
You
What
have
are
to-
we doing with
yes, you do have
37
to know.
Washington? I mean, 37 Washington.
But that trigger is
I
gonna
don't
help
see
that
as
decision.
a bad building. I see that as a perfect spot for the Marine, in my opinion. Just one little guy just driving up and down the road looking at everything. But that's not gonna get decided here. That's why I can't figure out why we put all this stuff in and we really don't know if we're gonna do it. Is that just a holder for budgetary purposes of some of this stuff? I'm
This
just
stuff,
curious.
no, this is stuff that,
I mean,
this is stuff that from the LLB report, we have
Yeah.
to do to make sure these buildings stay standing.
okay.
Matt, just to follow up on that, can we maybe get some perspective, though, I mean, on the, when things will be, if something is proposed for a new building with new bathrooms and changes to the facilities, when that might actually, if it were proposed and it were approved, when would it actually be built, contrasted against what we have now and what the cost is? Because I believe in what you're saying, that, but on the other hand, you know, this is kind of like a minor version, very minor, you know, not even a 10 percentile of our island home. Excuse me, of our island home, where, you know, they're coming in and they're asking for $200,000 or $300,000 or $500,000 a year. I would just like to have a handle on if a new facility were proposed, when would it be built? Because then we can weigh a $28,000 request more accurately. Does it make sense? It's for a 5-year period, it's for a 3-year period, it's for 6 months. Because that gives us some perspective that I think is important. And not just with this facility, but as a general matter, I would look at that as kind of a determining factor, for me at least, in all of these decisions where we have a question of whether this building is going to be what we're living in permanently, or is it something that we're going to be, you know, replacing or relocating. So I just throw that out there, but I would like to know specifically for this, if it were approved at town meeting next year, which is probably impossible.
If what we're approved.
If a new facility, a new marine facility were approved.
We're not even, that's not even on the drawing board.
Okay,
That's not possible.
so what's the best case scenario that a new facility with bathrooms, when would it be built?
I don't know that there's a very good answer to that, because again, we don't have our long-term plan. When we most recently brought this up, the board wanted to focus on our island home before we start focusing on other municipal buildings. So this building is going to limp along until we have that plan.
Okay, so all I'm looking for is, not to put anyone on the spot, I'm just looking for a time parameter. Is
Greater
it
than 5 years.
limping for 5 years?
No,
Yeah, I would say 3 to 5.
Okay, so in my opinion, you know, that kind of addresses Nat's question and concern, because we know this is all we got for 3 to 5 years. Then the question becomes, do we put money into it? Is it necessary or not? You make really good point. I'm just trying to put it into a manageable decision-making type of a thing. So it sounds like 28.5 for 3 to 5 years. Now, then the question becomes, is this 28.5 get us, because I don't see anything in out years, does this get us where we need to be for 3 to 5 years with the building? Or should we be looking at spending 55? I'm not saying let's spend more money. I'm saying, how much money should we be spending for, this was the same point I was making with our island home, is if we know the useful life for the town is 3 to 5 years, what should we be spending over that period? And are we planning to spend it?
At this point, we are only looking at priority 1 items in the LLB report. Once we get those addressed, then we can go to priority 2. So at this point, we're only looking at the stuff that has to be done now.
So in terms of priority ones, noting that any 2 can become a 1 at any time, we're looking at 28.5 this year and nothing in the out years.
Until we finish the priority 1 stuff, which my guess is going to take close to 4 to 5 years.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Yeah, Jim.
Maybe
go-
this,
Jim.
not to belabor, but so this doesn't get us all the priority ones.
No.
Okay. And, so you're saying it's gonna take, is this about a quarter of it?
these are the
facility.
most important,
In terms of the dollars, are they?
yeah, we
Hard to
didn't,
say. You
we
didn't
didn't
probably test them. Yeah.
tally dollars. We took the items that were most
Okay.
critical.
I'm sorry, you're talking about priority ones within the upgrades?
LLB report.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Which is kind of your like plan, which is nice. So when we ask questions like, is this important, or how does this compare to this, you said, I got this plan, and we're implementing the plan.
Right, and but that is just for repairs. Anything
understand,
new
Right,
would
yeah.
require
Yeah.
another.
Yeah,
Is that LLB report complete?
it's in your.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I saw it. Honestly, I got this last night, so I haven't read it. Okay. Is it a valuable tool? Has it been helpful?
Yeah, it's been very, very.
Is it, how much was that, do you know?
50 or so, or 56,
Yeah,
something like that.
We can find out.
I was curious if it's, worth the money.
In going forward, is that something that you envision will be interdepartment? It'll be something that the facilities department does, is takes this as a template and maintains it and updates it, or do you see this as going out to bid for someone such as LLB to do on a semi-regular basis?
You mean an update of the plan or
Well,
the work?
the plan.
The plan.
Is this something that you're going to internalize and do as a facilities department? So you have a regular update, or is it something you're going to
Not
bid
with the
out?
staffing that we have. I think that's something that we would probably continue to outsource as needed.
Okay, thanks. I'm just curious, because it's 2:15 and this was done, and I'm wondering when the next one will be.
Well, we had one facilities manager and 2 staff members for the first 2 years, and then Mark's only been here a couple months, so we're still in the process of forming the facilities division.
Right, but did this report happen before the facilities division was totally finalized? I thought it did.
When it was pretty brand new.
Right. So that shouldn't be a gating item on whether a new report is generated by an outside source.
It is if we haven't gotten to the work items in it. I would hesitate to spend more money on getting somebody to come in and do a review when we haven't been able to get to the stuff that was in the first report.
So you don't think the conditions of the building makes a difference? A significant enough difference to warrant a new report
Well,
after a
now we
3-year
have
period?
people monitoring the condition of the buildings. When this was done, we didn't have that.
Gotcha, thank you.
So, I'm sorry, because I haven't read the report. So they went through and just detailed each building that is now under the facilities umbrella.
Yeah, not all of them, but most of them.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they recommend updating it once a year?
Of course they do.
I thought that's what I was gonna say. So, I mean, obviously they'll recommend it, but like you said, if you can't even touch 10% of the stuff that they request you do, and then you have them do another report, I'm sure it's not gonna change that much, except for pointing out more things that you should be doing, which will probably be more than the 10% that you successfully completed the previous year.
If we had it done every 3 to 4 years, I think that would be more than
I mean, yeah, if you're spending 50 grand in addition to what you're already doing, I think, yeah, understood.
Okay.
it's a great business model.
Of course.
All right, Karen, if you want
The last item in 18 is actually a request from the police department. They have been the ones maintaining this building, and they are requesting $45,000 to do painting of the exterior of the building. I haven't received that quote yet, but we will attach it. as
This
soon as
actually
we
is
get it.
coming out of the capital plan, because it's already being proposed and will be funded through the regular budget already. It was through the budget process, the police actually put it in, so you didn't know that, and that's fine.
So
But this,
we went a little round and round about this internally, because initially this was either in the LLB report or it came up through the police as part of the facilities review of what needs to be done in upcoming budgets. And because the amount is less than $50,000 threshold, we debated on whether or not we should lump it in, like we had a bit of a discussion about, or make it its own expense increase request in the general fund operating budget, and that's where it was lumped in. So
Karen, would you mind just going, there's just a few other items in some of the out years. Could you just kind want to go through those?
The next one is priority items for 20 South Water. There's been discussions about what to do about the downtown block, and the big question mark has always been 20 South Water. And so we put it in 19 to give another year's discussion time to decide, do we truly want to spend money on upgrading that building? This is for the demo upstairs and doing other items of work that would make that area habitable. Right now, it's not. So that's in 19, and the other piece of it is also, the 100,000 is also for replacing the drywall upstairs. The third item in 19 is just a general request for 100,000. The facilities division, for the first couple of years, did repairs out of warrant articles, and the thought was that we would request a general piece of money to do repairs that aren't visualized at this time. And we also put that into 21, so every other year there would be a request for a certain amount of money.
So that would be, as you envision now, a placeholder of 100,000 each year? Is that right? Or every other
Not
year?
every other.
Every other year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in 20, there's 75,000 for renovations to 25 Federal and 3 East Chestnut. Assuming those buildings are going to stay for a while, there's shingling that needs to be done on the outside and some windows that need to be replaced. So that's for that work. And then we have the Marine Department reconstruction design, which what we'll do is wait on administration's review of the whole town staff housing study. So that one we'll take out and add that once some determinations are made.
The LLB report passed $75,200.
Okay.
That makes a difference too.
Steve?
Kara, do you have, just as a percentage perhaps, what is the, are you carrying a line item for maintenance of facilities in your general funds appropriation, your operations expense?
The way facilities has been budgeted, there's been a couple of different budgets that money's come out of, and some has been DPW, some has been public buildings, and we haven't actually consolidated everything yet. We're working towards moving everything into public buildings so that all of the work that they do on maintenance and so forth comes from that location. So right now it's probably 25 to 30,000 in the DPW budget, and then public buildings, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's less than 100.
And you envision that will be, it'll be consolidated under one department, and then, I'm just kind of curious, this is just backfill for me in terms of information. The facilities department is going to be having staff who do maintenance repairs, or is this going to be more of, or maybe they do incidental maintenance, de minimis type stuff, and then the larger stuff is subbed out, or, projects over a certain level of how much time it takes or cost, or, I'm just kind of curious.
Our vision is to have an electrician under contract, a plumber under contract, a carpenter under contract, a roofer, heating and cooling under a contract, so that the larger projects would go to a vendor. But we have, besides Mark, a foreman and 2 staff members that take care of doorknobs and sticky windows and file cabinets and lights and the small stuff. So we do have people on staff to take care of it.
And Mark, one last.
Yeah, sure.
This isn't a trick question, but, so what's your philosophy on the maintenance side of it? On maintenance in general?
in regards to?
The public facilities.
That's not a trick question, that's a massive question.
Yeah, that's the key.
To fix them
You
when
can't
they're
have
broken.
innocent windows downtown, there's the first problem, right there.
But I mean, I-
Wooden windows.
Can you narrow it down a little bit?
Well, I think the gist of it is I'm trying to get a read on your perspective from what we've been talking about in all these meetings when it comes to buildings is new buildings replacement, new buildings or replacement, new buildings or replacement, new buildings or replacement. And I'm not seeing, and I understand that there's other forces at play here other than new buildings and replacement that affect whether each department is doing maintenance. You have personnel costs, you have I understand that. But for me, what I'm trying to get at is maintenance. Maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. We live on an island, all the stuff that's obvious to all of us. Are we budgeting enough money for maintenance? What's the philosophy with maintenance versus it just appears, and this isn't any particular department. I see pictures, I see things. The police department building is the first picture I've seen where someone's asking for painting that isn't the building is falling apart painting.
You have to go back to the history of town government. We haven't had a facilities division, so
No, I understand.
nobody's been maintaining.
I understand
There's been buildings being built, brand new buildings, just like this one, and then everybody walks away. And then when they turn around and look at it again, it's like, oh my God, that thing needed maintenance. There has not been a staff available.
Yeah.
We are so far behind on just normal maintenance that we would need a staff of 50 to be able to throw at all the buildings to try to just bring them up to snuff. So Mark is fighting a steep slope to get to the point where we can actually proactively maintain it. Real world,
Private
the
sector.
best case scenario, private sector, you get everything up to snuff and then you just wait for stuff to be done. We don't have that luxury. We're scrambling every single day to just try to keep it from falling apart.
So the question then, having filled all that in, is how are you seeing, what's your philosophy in tackling this and getting it caught up? How are you looking at this?
Well, I mean,
Game plan.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just
I mean-
curious, you're the new facilities department director.
no, it's the question's not a problem. I just want to make sure I can answer it.
Sure.
Give you
Yeah,
some
yeah.
information. I mean, it's changing a little less rapidly than when I first started because there's still a learning curve. Preventative maintenance is key, but as Kara explained, there are a lot of interruptions to interruptions, and that's what makes it difficult to spend any time on organizing a plan as far as how you're going to approach these things. The LLB report is good for that because it takes it out many years and has identified some of the larger issues that need to be addressed. And then, we're on a daily basis. This morning, that's looking at the heat that needs to be in these buildings and is everything running correctly? So we have the main components that are running correctly, and we've got the users who aren't getting everything that they need, and then between there's a lot of issues as far as why isn't this getting to where it needs to be, specifically the heat.
7 o'clock on Mark's first
Hasn't
day
even been cold yet.
of work.
That's the other issue. If it's cold, then we know that it's calling for heat. On an in-between day, you don't know whether it's calling for heat or not.
The very first introduction Mark had to facilities was the sewer backing up in the town building. And that's how he spent his first day, clearing the sewer.
Jim,
I think it's I won't say premature, but it's like as Kara said, the facilities department's very new. They're scrambling now. They're reacting, and maybe another way to tackle the question is ask what assumptions did the LLB folks make when they developed their plan in terms of strategy, like we want you to make an assessment based on this criteria or something.
Part of it is you have that report, so you're coming in and that's kind of giving you somewhat of a game plan to start off with. That's huge for just starting and having this whole inventory of buildings. That could dictate some of this the game plan or the approach. But so the facilities, you said you're gonna you're contracting out for plumbers and electricians, not on staff, contracting out?
Right, we don't have any licensed
Okay.
plumbers or electricians.
Now,
on
for maintenance staff to keep things going along the way, will the facilities have a designated facilities employee, or will it be someone from DPW coming over?
There's designated staff.
There is now.
The
Yeah.
foreman and
Yeah.
2 staff for the foreman.
So you currently have that. So they will specifically, their job is to work on these facilities, and that's it. All right.
Okay, so unlicensed tasks, technically.
Yes.
I know that sounds,
No, that's
you know what I mean?
Correct.
pretty clear.
You don't have to have a license to paint, you have to have a license to fix wood.
Right.
And shingling and different things that are small.
What's the vehicle inventory for the department?
We actually were granted money to replace the existing van that has all of the equipment in it, and that's been ordered. We haven't received it yet. So they have a dedicated van with equipment. There's a Ranger pickup for the facilities manager and another pickup for the foreman. So there's 3. And then they have access to whatever vehicles they need.
Sorry, I just need to get my head around it. And is there a designated office for facilities?
Yeah,
Which is-
in the DPW, Mark has his own office, and there's a second desk in there for the foreman, but he mostly works off of his tablet. And then, in terms of shop space, there's a very small, I don't know how many people have gone out to see this old house. There's a remainder from
Is that
somebody's
Are,
garage.
are this old
I was gonna say, that house is on Nook Street.
It is on Mill Street, you're right. Everyone knows that one building.
It's kind of a,
And it's
never mind.
Victorian.
It's in perfect
Right.
shape too, in the basement.
Cool in a residential little store.
It
Steve?
is, but.
Kara, on the design of the new DPW building, have you considered, you probably have, but I want to just ask the question, some type of a supplement so that there's facilities department maintains things, facilities department has staff, trucks, they're gonna have equipment, they're gonna have materials, probably more so than than the DPW, because you're gonna have materials that are, you're gonna build a little bit of an inventory. So with that said, have you looked at, or are you looking at, or are you gonna propose some type of a supplement to the DPW building, the new building that's being proposed, so that the facilities department is properly and appropriately equipped in terms of space?
Yeah, right now, the plan is to have a standalone garage for vehicles and an extension to the existing mechanics garage for sign shop and carpentry shop. And then there's an addition to the administration building for staff. Right now, the staff is in one of the garages, and our thought is to take them out of the garage and move them into a more welcoming facility.
So to be clear, so you're thinking more of repurposing existing spaces as
No,
DPW move
making
into?
an addition.
Making an addition to,
Building addition.
okay, thank you.
Sounds to me like you need somebody like we have that does the signs. And that's a person, not a job. That's the person. You know, this is like weird stuff to talk about. I bring up this beamship again. Lots of people standing around, can't paint one little rusty spot. Not in their contract, not in their, it's very hard to fix this. I don't have an answer either, by the way, at all. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a culture thing, it's a union thing, it's a procurement thing, it's a whole bunch of things all wrapped up into one. So, I don't know. I mean, do you hire a private company to do it through sort of contracting, or should we decide on, okay, what are we gonna do ourselves unlicensed? I think that's a good start. Like, what are we doing versus what we can't? It's complicated. I mean,
We did a bid
I don't
for
know.
a contract.
That's right.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Several million
It
dollars.
was well over $1 million annual.
because no one knows what they're getting into, right? They don't know. It's sort of a holder bid, right?
That's part of it.
I mean, I'm looking at this like what these LLB, whatever their company thing is, they're doing, and they're doing their job. Like I could go into a building right now and do the same thing. And I don't know anything, but I know enough about it. And I could make a case and say, well, that boiler's 30 years old, it's got to be replaced, but it doesn't. In some cases, it'll last another 20 years. It depends on the things that, you know what I mean? To just say something needs to be replaced is really not always accurate. So it's a complicated, you're in a peculiar position because anybody can put a bunch of stuff down on a piece of paper in any single building and say, this is bad, this needs to get fixed, but and make it sound scary, and it's not. It's like the roof at the town building. It can last another 100 years because it's asbestos. Why bother with it, right? I'm just saying. You're going to put a new roof on that lasts 30, but we got one that lasts 200 now. It's kind of crazy, you know? And the guy said that at the meeting, by the way, at the selectmen's meeting. So.
Jim?
And that's why we have the facilities department that'll take this kind of thing and say, that'll apply Nantucket law to it and make decisions about
Well,
the
and
best
the
thing.
the problem before was every person in each individual building said, well, my building needs this.
Yeah.
And they were all competing against each other.
For the budget,
And
right.
now there's one person doing
It's a big job.
homogeneous.
I know. I don't have it. I see it. I just, it's,
Libby, has there already been any updated decision-making on the Children's Beach concession, on what's going on
leave
there?
it alone.
I think our plan is to do some cosmetic improvements and maybe some other minor repairs here and there. And we are actively looking at bringing in a porta potty trailer to just add more facilities down there. But I don't think we've completely reconciled what we are going to do about the overall building.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good, I think. Sometimes we make more money by doing nothing. That's one of them. Jetties is the other, and Surfside's the other, in my opinion. Just my opinion.
And,
So, it's good.
Jetties Beach, are we doing what we kind of normally do each year, or is there additional stuff that's being done because of the change of person in there?
Additional. Yeah, the bathroom work is additional. We go in every winter and walk through and figure out what needs to be done. Last year it was a new hot water heater. This year it's going to be a grease trap. The bathroom facilities in the bathhouse are old, tired, and residential, and they need to be upgraded. So we'll upgrade fixtures.
Yeah, we have a meeting, a walkthrough at 11 with a new tenant, so generally with a new tenant, there are new ideas, so I would imagine that it'll be a little more comprehensive, more intensive than what's been done on an annual basis with an existing tenant.
How do you draw the line how do you draw the line, what's their responsibility and what is the town's responsibility?
It's all laid out contractually.
Yeah, okay.
Just curious, how many, freestanding buildings does maintenance cover on that? Is it 50,
I think it's 40.
40?
Under facilities?
So it's about 10 buildings per person on
good
your
guess.
staff, essentially? You form into,
I've never had that discussion, how we
Yeah,
break
we-
it down.
no, not break it down, but
Well,
I'm trying to
it's
think
some are
metrics,
tiny,
you know.
some are very
So
small.
Mark, you have the, you're gonna take care of
Yeah,
Fairgrounds,
well,
two
it's
fairgrounds,
just
one
more like
fairground.
everybody on one building,
Yeah, at
or-
a time.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and
obviously, I'm
then,
just trying to think.
that other building.
Like,
yeah.
like Dionis Beach, that's shut down and we don't touch it
Touch it.
from
For 8 months.
what,
Yeah.
November to April. So, there's a couple of
Yeah,
buildings like
sort of.
Yeah, we've
But
got
I mean, you can still go
pumping
do
stations
repairs out
that
there.
no one goes to, and,
Yeah.
they just sit there by themselves.
But Mark has to have 40 buildings in his head.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you have 4 people in 40 buildings, that's,
Yeah, why wouldn't you touch it? Why wouldn't you do it now, November? Say, why wouldn't you paint it or do some interior work?
I don't think they meant it
Because-
that way.
Yeah.
I think they
Well,
meant,
there's who has time to do anything come
Yeah.
April and, other than,
No, it's
But
not a
may-
matter of not touching it, it's priority, like I said,
Yeah.
there
we don't think
are ones
about it.
that scream for
Yeah.
attention, mainly because people are in there and using it. That's the big part of it. You have the building, it doesn't do anything by itself. It's when people are using it that you really need to be on top of it the most.
Unless again a wall's falling down by the end of the season or something.
Sure, but it's the.
Yeah. Richard?
Would any of this stuff qualify for CPC, the CPC program?
I doubt it, it's not.
It had to have been built by CPC money, I think.
Yeah, there's certain rules, it's not, they're not just.
Playground is the only thing that, but it's replacement, which I understand that, I think that kicks it out. It has to be new playground.
But I guess my question is, are we looking at trying to get some CPC money or something?
I don't think that any of these are applicable.
Or when something, are there any that are applicable? And in future,
It's a good filter.
Well, we did,
in the future, to keep that sort of in the mind.
I think we can do some kind of little evaluation on it, but I think the only buildings that might be applicable would be something like 20 South Water Street, the old police station, which is, some people debate about whether or not it's historic.
Oh, no, it clearly would qualify.
So, that actually, I think it's linked to CPC.
CPC,
already
state, possibly even
for
federal.
that building, and it was not
the
accepted.
Nobody or Fieldhouse we did apply for, and they said no. So town meeting voted it last time, and actually that's another building that, the architect is working on for us right now.
The CPC also doesn't tend to fund very many town projects, very few.
What about the Tom Nevers playground equipment?
Possible.
It's possible, my time on the CPC, there's a court case about that as well. It's not for replacement of equipment, it's for new playgrounds and equipment. The CPC funds generally, they had to define that because some of the communities were replacing equipment and playgrounds, and that found not to be acceptable.
That's a good point, though. I mean, keep that in the.
And we had done
If
that
there-
here, we had replaced some
Yeah.
equipment and found that we couldn't do that, or CPC at the time. I don't know if it's changed, I hadn't heard that it had.
I don't think it has.
Stephen, did you have a comment?
It's too far forward. I'll
Yeah.
hold back.
I had one more question. On the facility, your staff, Mark, is that new staff, or is that people that came over from DPW? Yes, it's
DPW.
that.
They came over
Their
from
existing
DPW.
DPW.
And how'd you determine who came over?
Skill sets. One of the
Work ethic?
the foreman is
Did you say work ethic?
licensed CDL and very, very handy. One of the other individuals is a really good carpenter, great finish work, and the other one has carpentry experience as well. So kind of took the carpenters.
So Mark, you gonna keep them busy?
So far, it hasn't been a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanna make sure. Good.
What do you guys do about supplies? I mean, is it, do you go Green Home Center, or do you have a stock of supplies out of the DPW that you can go and, when you need a can of paint, you
Mostly
don't have to go?
buy off of the state bid list.
Yeah,
For
Keep inventory.
paint and individual pieces of equipment. If there's enough lead time, we'll order it from a state vendor.
Yeah.
If it's an emergency thing, we might go to
It's a
Island
combination.
or Marine.
yeah, 'cause I mean, if you
You
go to a
don't really
building,
have a lot of space to store things, so
Right.
it's, like paint, you might go down and get it right away,
Yeah.
because it's gonna be very individual,
Mhm.
specific. It's not a generic, like you can buy 50 gallons of paint, because you paint everything the same.
yeah.
We will order that,
That would
but if
be
it's a
ordered.
touch-up, we'll go get it.
I'm thinking with, 40 buildings, little individual things, you show up to do one thing, and then they point out 4 or 5 other things that, might require attention that might not have put on a list to pre-order. So I guess I'm just wondering, on this island, it seems like everything you have to wait on ends up, costing you triple the amount of time that you thought it was going to. So, just curious.
Yeah, we have a account at Marine, and we get our windows from Ireland, I think, generally, they do a good job for us.
Lumber from Shepley.
Right, okay.
Someone donated some lumber recently, so.
On the capital item for, let's see here, it was the general facilities maintenance, which was $100,000 for every other year. how does that differ from just your budget on what Peter said, going out to the store and getting something? What's the difference between that and this money that's allocated through capital?
Going out to the store would come out of the operational budget. This money is for hiring the vendors to do, recently we had to fix the kitchen floor and the bathroom floor at the Salt Marsh. And we had to go out to bid to get a carpenter and a tiler, and so that kind of thing would come out of that.
Okay, so a specific skill set that doesn't fall into your staff, need to contract that out.
And this pre-funds that bucket that you can pull out of once for 2 years, give or take.
Jim?
Nothing's easy.
No.
And
If
you
Municipal
think
The country?
if you think it's easy to go in and say, well, we'll just replace the floor. Actually, the complexity of that is, the town owns the something, land, building, town owns the building.
Salt Marsh?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And the Salt Marsh owns the building, but they don't have any money. So they came to us and said, we gotta fix this, and so we fixed it, but that took months of back and forth.
And
Back
now
and forth on that.
they're apparently having some internal discussion about coming to the town to do an addition, do a second
Right.
floor, do a
Oh,
redo.
But to the point about just maintenance,
That's crazy.
you know, I mean, it isn't just like fill out a work order, let's go replace the floor. It was just, you know, so.
Jim?
Yeah, that'd be
private
much
sector,
easier.
it's, I'm listening to him and I'm kinda laughing, cause he's saying all the right stuff about what you.
Well,
And I'm thinking about, I mean,
Hard to do.
a property
and I've been here
management
so
company,
too long,
you deal with this all the time on a day-to-day basis in your everyday job. I mean, you're pretty much maintaining people's houses, dwellings, either doing stuff operationally or, bidding out the contractors, but.
Just to make you feel better, corporate America operates the same way without unions.
Yeah.
Gobbledygook, suits,
Yeah.
everybody's in charge.
Careful.
Not enough people in charge. It's just crazy. No, it's true.
Yeah.
You can't, yes it is, you can't operate like a private little dinky company unless you're a private little dinky
Yeah.
company. It just doesn't work. We used to have a green lumber, I'm laughing. That's what ends up happening. You just can't help it. You
Yeah, you
can't
just
go
have
to
to-
Home Depot, well, we
It's
don't
not
have a
the
company
cheapest way to
credit
do
card,
it, but-
or we don't have this, I mean, it just doesn't work. But you can go there yourself this weekend if you go away, but you can't do it for the town, or you can't do it for your business. It's just hard to make stuff happen.
Melissa, do you have a comment?
I did, thank you. I just wanted to say that, it's gonna be really interesting at the Board of Selectmen last week, there was the Harbor Place development. That's, the concept is being proposed, and those ideas are floating around. And I do think it's a really interesting time for the town to start thinking again about the comprehensive planning of town-owned buildings. What needs will be served if something like that is developed, and then what needs will need to be addressed outside in some of those other buildings. I'm not saying that provides a lot of answers, but it is an interesting junction in time where we're going to be seeing maybe seeing a lot of town infrastructure development, and we have an opportunity to think large scale about how do public restrooms and access fit into the marine department? Where do we need resources at 20 South Water Street and that whole block? What could that redevelopment look like if some of that is taken care of at Harbor Place? So I don't know whose responsibility it is to start that comprehensive thinking, but strikes me that it's an interesting time for different people to start coming together and thinking about the bigger picture. So that, the maintenance plans that are going to carry us through the next 5 years are working with the capital development projects that are happening, that are both private and public. It's just my comment.
We just wanted to follow up, just when the board of selectmen and couple months ago came up with the beginnings or baseline for the strategic plan, which was to happen at the start of November, but because of personnel issues, it'll be in May. But one of the, we targeted 5 areas, and, facilities, infrastructure is one of the 5, so that's already on the Board of Selectmen's, radar, and will be fleshed out a little more with process in the spring.
Because I can say as a department head for culture and tourism asked about, 5 or 10-year capital need requests in my building. Obviously, we use the LLB report because somebody else has done the infrastructure report, but I'm not going to make recommendations
Right.
for large planning and development if that building in 10 years is going to serve a different function.
What you're saying is 100% accurate, and also it fits into this, where is the final resting place for X going to be? And the good thing about, and this is kind of crazy, kind of sorry, but it's good, there's a lot of good in not doing anything right now, because we don't know what we're doing with some stuff, and it actually fits into the harbor place. Nothing's been done there since the mid-60s, not one thing, except Stop and Shop improving the existing square box, concrete box down there. So with the town not having really done a lot either, is actually might help. Okay, well, we haven't done anything here, that's good, because this is a better idea. Yeah, that kind of thing, you know what I'm saying?
You have to backtrack.
I mean, who in their right mind in 1979 would have thought that the central fire station in the Mid-Island was temporary?
Yeah, yeah.
Seriously.
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
They would have said, this is it, we're all set. Right? Seriously. And nobody would have ever believed that that was going to end up being temporary. Just like the Island Home, 1980, that's like yesterday.
It's like the new island.
It's crazy. I mean, you just don't think like that, so I think it's good that we're public-private in some of this thinking process now. And I'll tell you, to get back to that 20 South Water, something historic like that is worth spending more money on in some minds of some. Is forget about, well, we're going to save money here or there. Sometimes you have to spend more on certain things for whatever reason, But I think Melissa's right on the money on that. It's for bathrooms and satellite visitor service tied into that, like with some little person there that the next person that's going to be handing out pamphlets, where are they going to go, that kind of stuff. So, anyway.
So, Karen, this facility's, this is updated from one that we may have had before, because I'm looking at one DPW admin building roofing. Is that gone?
That actually is in the request for roofs.
Okay. It's in that, okay, gotcha.
Yep, it's in our roofing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick, I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
No, go ahead.
jump in again.
We gotta wrap up.
Mr. Chairman, I know, I needed to go when I got here. Okay, are we doing any foam insulating the roofs, any of these places, getting it when we can? Is that places that are exposed, get wide open plywood? Are we doing some energy conservation stuff, like as part of some of these little projects, because it's not that hard to do? It'll
Well,
save us tons of money if we do, if we're keeping the building.
Any of the buildings that are climate controlled. But the last one we did was.
Yeah, but you can foam the roofs of the inside of these buildings.
Well, I
Cut your
mean,
heat bill and the cooling bill
so
down
ones that
in half.
have heating.
It's unbelievable.
Ones that have heating.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
I
about.
don't
When I
know.
look at your building out there, that's a very dry building. Like it's in the sun, like all day. It's hot, crispy. Like, everything is really dry out there. The roof, the shingles, the trim. It's unbelievable. It looks older than it is.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about that. I meant to ask this with some of the other stuff. If we're doing some of this work, are we looking at any of it with energy stuff, or is that Lauren's department, or what are we? I don't know what we're up to. I'm just curious.
Lauren
On
and
ones that
Mark-
we're keeping.
Lauren and Mark will meet eventually. or-
We had, we met yesterday. We're doing, looking at lighting right now, still in several of the buildings. That particular issue hasn't really come up. I look at it, maybe a little bit more holistically, that the roof, yeah, that's a great place in one way, but it really needs to be incorporated with walls and floors and so forth. To look at all of those things together and then come back, and you may only decide to do the roof.
Well, the roof is where there's nothing.
But-
It's blowing 90 miles an hour through these roofs. That Salt Marsh Center, you go up there in the wintertime,
Well, that might be a good
Let me tell you
case,
something.
like the DPW roof.
it's outside.
DPW may not, because it's a newer building, and it should have sufficient insulation.
Yeah.
So that would be the determinant. I don't know, that we have a good sense, inventory-wise, about what all the buildings, how they're constructed, and what's happened to them over the years. It's really more of, what do you know about the building from our guys and determining, because they're all different construction methodologies.
Yeah, that is
So
true.
that
You're right.
complicates the
Yeah.
issue a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else, you guys?
Yeah.
Well, Mark, nice of you to join us, and good job. Keep you guys busy.
Thanks. Yeah, no problem with that.
Yeah. So, there is, I still have to meet with one comment, and Jim, I know you were the point person for our island home. Steve and I were interested in meeting with her again to sort of, well, number one, I haven't been there. Yeah, and I think with her having a sense of maybe rethinking a few things because of the possibility of there being a new building in some time. So I think we're just interested in, I'll let you know and would love you to, if you're
No,
available.
you go. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
as many eyes on it
Yeah.
as possible, and I think if anything, Rachel's been,
Thanks, guys.
because it's always
Thanks.
been,
Thank
okay,
you.
in a couple of years, we're gonna have a new building. I think the issue this year is, we gotta do this stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like to join you guys.
Okay, I'll let you know when, I'm waiting to hear back from Katie when she's considering that. I think Rachel's putting through the steps to her head a little bit.
Yeah,
So
she
we'll
got
find out. Yeah.
kind of redirected a little bit.
And, I think it's good we go and we also can offer a little bit of support.
Absolutely.
And hopefully become advocates for the new project.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna
If-
see it.
Yeah.
So anyway, just start thinking about, your visits and putting some thoughts down, and I don't have our schedule with us.
We're behind the meeting. Because this was supposed to be recapping status review. So-
Right.
So we've got.
Do we have next
Here.
week? Yeah.
So we've got next week off. Next, this was supposed to be recap and status review. Next, the following would have been the end of November, review outstanding items, issues, which I presume would have been, if we had recap and status review, if issues came up and we needed supplemental documents, the next meeting we'd get them and then we could work on finalizing.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is simply that we're a week behind,
I see.
or meeting behind, not necessarily we have to meet once a week.
Everything else, well, we have no meeting next week.
Okay.
So,
And
Let's
the
take those-
following
take-
week
take-
is- What's the date?
the following week is the 30th. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that was working. It's the following one I won't be at. I won't be at the 7th.
Yeah,
Whatever the
yeah,
next
'cause you have,
Wednesday is.
yeah, so we're off next week, and then we have one on the 30th.
Yeah, I'll be
Which
here.
is not, okay, great. So take the few weeks and ponder your thoughts, and, I'm gonna try to start putting together some sort of, report for Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee with cover page and sort of, I don't know, the routine data, but, anyway. What do you got?
Do you think we're gonna, I've never done this with
What do
you
you
guys
think?
before. I mean, if we just revise this to show where we actually are, we've got this on the 30th, this would have been on the 7th, the 15th would have been adoption, and then the 15th would be, you know what I mean? We've lost the meeting, so
Yeah.
do we have enough time to do what we're supposed to be doing? Or do we need to double up a week, or, I don't know, I'm asking.
Well, let me ask you this, are people available next week?
Yeah.
I'm not
If-
going anywhere.
Okay,
You're not gonna have your staff there.
okay. But we could still meet and, internally as a committee.
For our recap and status
Yeah.
review.
All right, I'll send an email out. I'll figure that
You
one out.
have
What?
I would take her lead on this.
On what?
I can sense what she's
Yeah.
thinking.
Let's-
If you
let's do
can't,
it.
no, listen, if you can't be here, that's,
If we-
I mean,
I mean,
internally,
what are
I
we
think
gonna-
we've got plenty we can,
Yeah, just.
I mean, you wanna talk about the meetings that we've, on the on-site meetings? Is that what you wanna do?
that,
makes
and
sense.
just maybe what we want to put in the report. It's,
Yeah.
it's new to me too, so,
Be nice if we could get a final updated list of every department's requests, because I feel like we keep seeing them change a little bit. I don't know if,
Yeah.
I can put that, I can ask Brian for that.
yeah, maybe just the most recent one.
Yeah.
Just let me know when, so we can get it posted.
Right.
Okay, I will.
Oh,
Can I ask this question of the FinCom committee members?
Peter,
Peter?
how about,
Well,
well, he's not,
former
FinCom rep's not here.
Former FinCom members.
Yeah.
What are you expecting from this committee?
I can speak personally.
endorsements? I mean, just,
I'll speak after
So
Jim.
last year, we received from this committee, and we talked about this briefly in the meeting, basically passed along all the recommendations. Your recommendations were everything the town had put forward, and without any kind of like prioritization. And so that made FinCom's job a little more difficult. What I sensed from some of the conversations you had is you wanted to do it a little differently this year.
There's just a little bit of data I wanted to include, which was items that were omitted and why, because a lot of those questions came up, why was this item omitted? For example, the roofing, if they don't see that, it's like, well, it's itemized differently. Or why did they move something into the out years? That came up.
I'm saying, given whatever the budget is for capital, we should clarify that. If the budget's $5 million and you pass along $10 million in requests, that doesn't help. Okay.
I think the questions I remember that Finance Committee asked was, what did you omit? I think you asked it, actually. What did you omit, and why? And we didn't have answers for that. There was also, the difference between doing it in-house and contracting out? What's the, why do you go one way or the other, came up.
But I did specifically also ask the question. I said, so you're recommending everything that was sent
Correct.
to you.
You did say that.
And I said, what do we do with that? And we need some prioritization. And do you do that? And they said, no, we used to do that. We don't do it anymore. So again, that doesn't, it just makes that process go up a notch.
And so now, after being here for a whole season of Capcom, do you think that you have an idea of what we'd be able to provide to FinCom after being there last year?
We have the most knowledge of anybody right now.
Right.
Okay, other than town administration. So so we have to inform people on, if we say, gosh, everything that we've sent has to be done, fine. If not, we should be able to say this is, I don't know, some process of prioritizing. I mean, if I have a budget, I'm gonna have to live with it.
Yeah.
So we only have so much free cash, and unless you would recommend we do a borrowing for this, or override, or something, I think we just.
Can I just add one thing to what you're saying? I think, what I'm getting out of this, even though I'm not a big finance guy, I always say that I'm not, but I understand it enough. This holding money thing, it seems to be new. I've only been on this committee, this is my third year. Holding, like, is the new way to sort of.
Placeholder?
Yes, that is new. At least in my experience, it's true.
With the money.
But I think that's a good thing. I think it's a new way, like we're doing it with the sidewalks. I mean, that was really the
You
beginning.
mean in out years or current?
Yeah, the holding, like the school, I asked him a question without publicly asking because I saw it. 500 for land acquisitions, but they don't really know what they're buying yet. So they're kind of putting it in sort of, and I hear that from everyone is
But that's
saying.
in an out year. We don't want to authorize that in a current year.
No, I understand. What I'm getting at is, when he's talking about the report and going over like what we want, I think that that's a positive new trend from department heads. A way to kind of,
Not be blindsided.
yeah.
Puts it on the radar.
And it means that they're thinking. It means that they're looking at it like it was their own house. It was their own job. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then
What
the other,
Diane said is what she's doing is she's looking at taking it back in like facilities is that, it's not that they're aggregating all the projects and putting it in one pool of money and we'll be able to move it back and forth.
No,
between
that's right.
schools. So
I get that.
If that's what you're saying, I agree with that.
I'm
But-
just-
But not saying let's have a placeholder of a pocket of money that we can draw.
Yeah, I don't think he's saying
No,
endorse
I'm
it.
not. I'm
just
talking
saying
about,
raise that for the-
I'm
the-
talking
the
about with
department
the,
heads
yeah.
getting in their head
They're
about-
saying, they're having a little,
It's a cultural
sort
shift.
of
Right.
holding
Okay.
fund for stuff that they can't really identify perfectly, okay? The other thing that I think we should be putting in our report is some way to explain, without going beyond the scope of this committee, but talking about investing in buildings that we're keeping versus investing in buildings that we may not be, that are under question, the town administration and the selectmen's plate. I really believe that that's important
Yep.
because FinCom's the next step. it helps, may help them with the same questions that we have. It sort of pre-answers questions that are already gonna happen by other members. That's all I'm saying. I mean, other than that, I don't really have
Stephen and
anything
Richard.
else to add.
Just to follow up on two things. One, to follow up on what Nat was saying. It's almost like another level of priority, but it's also a whole new classification. And we have priorities currently which seem to be, town needs in terms of, we need more space for people, or the building's falling down, if I can overgeneralize. But there's another category, in a sense, for prioritization that fits into the big plan of how long is the building going to last? So using our island home as our poster child, in a sense here. They would be in a classification of, they have these requests, and their building is going to be, at best case scenario, a new building 4 to 5 years out. So they may, in our collective discussion, be higher up on the list than a building that needs the same amount of money or lesser money or whatever. That's going to be replaced in 2 years or a year. So just to follow up on Nat's thought, it made me
But
think
maybe
about
I hate to be provocative, but if all this committee does is take the input from town administration, whatever that dollar is, say it's $5 million, we think about it, talk about it, understand it, and then pass it on to the FinCom. If that's all that, this is kind of provocative, if that's what this group does, why not just cut that piece out and just have everything go right from town administration?
Well, see, that's what I thought last year.
Go right.
I'm sorry,
To not even have this group meet and just go from town administration to finance committee. If you're not, there's no really value added if you don't do something with that information other than learn about it.
Was that in response to what I said?
I don't know what you're saying.
No.
I'm not saying that.
No, I'm just trying to understand
trying
what
to say.
I'm making a point.
It's
about
aside from.
Oh, okay. I was trying
It's
to.
his own comment.
Yeah, okay, separate and apart.
Yeah,
Okay,
this
I was
is
just
the
trying to
role of the
understand.
I don't think I'm saying that at all.
No.
that's all I
Jim's
was
saying
saying.
it individually,
I'm not
separately.
responding to
Yeah,
you.
but I
Yeah.
mean,
I'm not
okay.
responding to
Gotcha,
you.
gotcha.
I was asked the question, what do we do? What do
Yeah.
we want to give to the finance committee? And all I'm saying is that
Right.
if we meet every week, and this has been interesting, but if all we do is pass along everything to the FinCom, I don't know if I needed to be here.
But that's not to say we have to cut something. It could be that there's an improvement in long-term planning.
Yeah.
Or there
That's all I'm
is a better understanding of facilities and the maintenance going forward. I don't know. But,
I guess
what do you-
I'm at a different place.
what do you think?
You took a
What I
step
said
back
la-
from that discussion.
What I said last time in finance committee is we have a certain amount of money, and we need the guidance of this group on how to spend it.
Yeah.
And we can't, I assume, I haven't added up the numbers, but I assume it's gonna be more than $5 million in this packet, in all these departments. So how are we, so if if this group recommends we do all that stuff, how are we gonna pay for it? And is that, I've been getting some blank stares, so I guess that doesn't, maybe that's not what you see the role of this group. I always saw the role of this group as it's a subcommittee of the finance committee.
Yeah,
And
that's
you're
how I
making
see
a
it.
report to the finance committee on what we should spend our money on.
So my question
Yes.
is to Libby. Will you give us the top line number of what you foresee as, you have your own recommendations on all of this stuff.
Yeah, we haven't even done that part. Our top line number would probably be something that fits within available revenue.
Okay, so,
And it's gonna be a combination of free cash, the allocation within the general fund budget, which is around $780,000. And there may be some limited other funding sources from the sales of real estate account.
so what's your timetable on getting that together?
Brian and I are talking about it on Monday.
Okay.
So you'll have a number for capital for this group.
Well, I have never really had that, so that's a kind of a little bit of a departure from every other year. If you want a number, I guess what we'll give you is, here's the available revenue. Make whatever recommendation you all want within that amount of revenue. sometimes the capital program committee, I think, in prior years, has recommended a debt exclusion for certain higher dollar
Sure they
projects.
Yep.
So that might, I mean, like, I don't know, I mean, that's pretty obvious, it's gonna be a debt exclusion. There may be, I'm not sure what else is in there right now that might meet that criteria, but there's obviously too many, more projects than we have money for available.
So if we just pass that along to finance committee and, you know, without some kind of a either prioritization saying we don't have to do these things this year, or saying we need a debt exclusion override or something.
Well, that, isn't that what has happened in the past? The committee has prioritized the projects.
Last year, no, they all said everything's important.
Man,
But they all fit within available revenue last year, I think. I don't think there were any debt exclusions.
Stephen?
I think it's important for us to have a number from town on what they anticipate capital should be from, you know, the administration's perspective. Not so much, you know, I keying off what Jim's saying. I believe we're an independent group. We're tasked to do an independent review. And I've seen nothing that would indicate that we're gonna do anything otherwise. But I still think we should have that number because it helps us to prioritize. It's kind of like this thing with how long the building is gonna be used determines how much money we put in. It's kind of like, it's not exact, but if we know that the town administration itself feels $50 million is the absolute minimal capital cost, it's an important number for us to have as a backdrop that we may draw on when we're doing our own prioritization. And it's also a useful number because it's not like this is going to be drawn out of the thin air. The finance committee, the board of selectmen, everybody's, you know, kind of knows what the general number that's going to be recommended is. So we are somewhat on the same page that way. If we know the numbers that's generally being talked about is 10 million, we have a metric. I'm not saying we should use it to determine what our result is, but we should be aware of it, I think. Having said that, I think there's been a lot of discussion about what we'll discuss when we meet to finalize this, and we very easily could use an extra meeting, having lost a scheduled meeting. The worst case scenario is we finish early, God bless us, and we have a week off. But I would suggest that we kind of stick to our outline, but we add a meeting to make that happen. Because I know I'm going to have a bunch of questions, and I think there's supplemental information we require, and I think some of it is basic information, like we need a finalized, updated SIP from the town. And I understand that they're not holding back. It's that the departments are moving things around and so on and so forth.
If you guys are meeting Monday, would we have the number maybe for if we were to meet next week?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean,
So we meet Tuesday, we have that information, and then we can decide, because what Phil said to me, when I asked the question last year, I said, don't you prioritize? He said, well, we used to do that a few years ago, we don't do it anymore.
Well, I think Libby has the answer to last year. Everything fit within the available.
No, this committee changed their process a couple of years ago, and
Yeah,
no
they used to have
longer
a prioritization.
Yeah.
Because, and Jim, the thought process there, just to follow this through, is that the finance committee, just like the selectmen, are going to have their own priorities, but they want us as a recommending group to, with a deeper knowledge, to at least present to them what we believe the priorities are, so that they can factor that into their decision making. Otherwise, why do they need
I just
it?
know when I was in the finance committee, we didn't have other priorities that I recall. It was really you folks. So we didn't say, well, we don't want you to do this, we're going to do this instead.
Yeah, no, I mean, the meeting with the capital committee as a finance committee member was a big meeting.
Yeah.
It was significant, and,
Yeah.
you know,
But you're getting the same information that we've gotten when you start meeting finance committee, so it's
Not in this depth,
well, I don't know, I've only been to 2 finance committee meetings, so I don't know what it is even like, except for the 2 I've been to. So, I mean,
you
is
say
it,
I'm gonna
the
meet
most
Tuesday?
entertaining meeting.
is it entertaining? Without me there?
next week.
Good.
When do you want it?
Just next week,
Same time, same batch.
same time,
Same
8
day?
8 a.m. on Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Yeah, and if staff is not able to attend, that's fine.
So that'll be our recap and status review. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, if you said you're not going to be there, if Brian's available,
Like,
I don't wanna,
can't promise.
I-
But
that's
Brian
fine.
and I are also working on the general fund budget.
Right.
Which takes even more of a massive amount of time than this.
Well, you know, at the very least, we get together, we've all been to meetings, we can kind of review, recap, get a better, clearer understanding as a group of what these requests are about, based on our having met individually with departments. And we can get a handle on what it is we want to put together as a recommendation, the structure of it, the strategy behind it, whether it includes priorities, to what extent, so on and so forth. I think it's an important meeting.
Yeah, all right, good. That's what we'll do. I'll let Peter know. I think that was it. Motion to adjourn?
Second.